It's been over a month since I've been cooped up in my apartment. I was really looking forward to being the first member of my family to graduate from college. My grandfather and father immigrated here from the Philippines and sacrificed so much to give me the chance to get an education and have a better life. If I had to have picked two people in the entire world to see me walk across the stage for commencement in May, it would have been them. On Sunday, after testing positive and being in the ICU for a couple weeks, I said goodbye to my grandfather for the last time over a Zoom call. Yesterday morning in his sleep, I lost my father too. He was supposed to get tested later that morning. I didn't get to say goodbye to him. I wish you could have met them. They were good people, man. The world is a worse place for having lost them. Yeah. My name is Fernando Reyes Jr., and I'm originally from Vallejo, California. My grandfather's name was Alberto Reyes, and my father, Fernando Reyes Sr. My house in Vallejo was a 4-bedroom, purchased in 1985, that my grandfather, grandmother, mother, father, and myself lived in for almost all my life. They got a divorce. My parents did when I was like 10-ish, and they took separate rooms in our 4-bedroom house. So I had my own room, my mother had one room, and my grandfather had one room, and my dad had one room downstairs. My father worked 2 full-time jobs. He was a bellman at the Omni Hotel on California Street. But for a period of time longer than that, he worked at the Ritz-Carlton. He would spend 14, 16 hours a day at times, away from the house 6 days a week. When I did spend time with my dad, it was a bunch of precious moments of, going to the movies together, going with him to SF and stuff. Sometimes on his days off to pick up his paycheck, I remember the wonder and awe of driving across the Bay Bridge and driving up California Street and his little side work employee's entrance to the Ritz-Carlton, where we would go and pick up his checks because for whatever reason he never enrolled in direct deposit. Like I said, my father worked a lot, so more often than not, when I was younger, my grandfather would be the one to pick me up from elementary school. Spent a lot of time with him in the backyard, gardening with him, helping him build stuff. We built this big red wooden swing that actually is still standing to this day in our backyard, and I'm actually surprised with its craftsmanship. My grandfather was like some sort of Filipino Bob the Builder type. When I would think about my own life and experiences and why I was striving for the best that I could do, I thought about my father's journey to America, my grandfather's. I thought that if my grandfather could be a farmer from the Philippines to, making a name for himself and owning his own house, the very least I could do is pay it forward to them, One week, I call my mom and she tells me she's getting over a flu. The same time around before shelter-in-place hits, I pleaded with her repeatedly as an essential worker in somewhere like the post office where you're surrounded by people that it very well could have been COVID-19 and to get tested as soon as she could. A couple weeks later, she says she's getting over it, and my aunt tells me that my grandpa isn't feeling well. In the middle of the night, I get a phone call from my family telling me that my grandpa had been transported to Kaiser, and they tested him for COVID-19, found out he was positive, and it got progressively worse. We had to plead repeatedly to even get something as what should have been a simple video call on an iPad. We were only able to speak with him less than a handful of times, I want to say 2 or 3. Kaiser's proprietary software for video conferencing and saying goodbye to loved ones with COVID-19, they couldn't call like more than one person on, so they decided to call my aunt. My aunt held the phone up through a Zoom call and basically held the phone up to me like that. So I was 2 screens removed from saying goodbye to the man who raised me over Zoom, over a FaceTime of a Zoom call. And it was a hellish ordeal. I don't think I'll ever get over that. My grandfather died on April 20th, 2020. In the time around my grandfather passing away, the previous week, my father had told me that he was feeling okay, with the exception of feeling a bit more drowsy all the time. I remember he called me and told me, he's like, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm not dying. But could you help me out with this DMV renewal of sorts," right? He was more concerned about that because he didn't think he was in any real danger. The day my grandfather died, my father said, "Kaiser wants me to come in on Wednesday of this week to get tested." And this was a Sunday night that my grandpa died on April 20th. The morning of that day, Wednesday, April 22nd, my aunt's husband called me and told me, "Your mom went to go wake up your dad for his appointment, and he wasn't responding." The paramedics came and said that he'd been dead for a couple hours. And he didn't get to get tested, of course. They tested him afterwards, post-mortem, and found out that he was COVID positive. And that's another thing I'll just never get over. Not being able to say goodbye to my own father. Not being able to tell him I loved him one last time. I tell him how much he meant to me. My mother actually wasn't even tested until after my father died. Only when they did they find out that she was also COVID-19 positive. She eventually recovered, but they didn't. My grandfather, as well prepared as he was, paid for his own funeral in advance when my grandmother died a couple years prior. We couldn't have more than 10 people there. It had to be the same 10 people. It's just like overwhelming sense of dread. It's being at the funeral home and being too afraid to sit down on the pews because you are afraid that you might be next, that you could give it to someone else that you love. Not being able to gather in public and see people who should be there to comfort you appropriately, to tell you that everything's going to be okay. And of course, beyond that, being gaslit by people who tell you like, "Oh, it's a hoax, it's not as bad, let me go get a haircut." The economic impetus of reopening cities and states back up, sweeping it under the rug as if it isn't going to get worse until we find some sort of vaccine. And how unempathetic the world can be in that sense, where people are telling you that these losses don't matter. My father, we chose to cremate because it was the cheaper option, because as someone who doesn't come from means, as someone who was recently graduated and unemployed, I couldn't drop $12,000 on a casket, let alone the services for a burial or for a plot of land. My father's ashes are in my room. I haven't put them into an urn yet because I haven't tackled that portion of, should I spread his ashes in the Philippines? Should I spread them on, the California street or on the Golden Gate Bridge? Should I just keep them with me as some sort of testament to, his life? Cherish the time that you have with your loved ones. Try to develop some sense of empathy and solidarity with the people around you, even if you don't know them. And be vigilant about public health concerns, because more people don't deserve to go through what I went through. Take it seriously.